This is the CreaseCast.
I could picture in that timeline where Thanos snaps his finger and wipes out half the universe, and then 5 years later, people in Canucks Twitter are arguing that it's still too early to judge whether destroying half of the universe's life sources was bad or not.
I'm just shocked he would have done this. This is crazy.
It's still too early to tell. Who could have seen
this coming? Yeah.
I could very much picture that happening, and it would
absolutely,
be really funny.
Absolutely.
But we're not here to talk about the death of 50% of the life forms of the universe. We're here to talk about the reinvigorating of life in 50% of the fan base.
Yay!
The Vancouver Canucks came into yesterday's game, so we are recording Tuesday at 5:45. They came into Monday's game with a lot of pressure on them. They had just left a very, very depressing series against the Habs in which they got trounced and outscored by an insane margin across 3 games. Looked awful the entire way. Stars weren't firing. The only firing that was really going on were the
metaphorical firing of Jim Benning.
Metaphorical fires that were burning in Canucks Twitter land as they got the hashtag fire Benning hashtag trending to number 5 across Canada. And so the Canucks came into yesterday's game with a lot on their shoulders, and lo and behold, against the the Ottawa Senators.
Easy mistake to make.
Yeah. After watching that game, a very easy mistake to make. But they actually win it out by a score of 7-1, absolutely dominating them. Wasn't even close. It was just embarrassing. It was like literally watching an NHL team face like a bunch of kids from the AHL. It wasn't fair, but it was enough to pour a little bit of water on the hot seat that is Jim Benning for at least the time being, or at least until this series is over against the Sens. Yeah. Lachlan, my host as always.
Yes.
What did you think of the Canucks game against the Ottawa Senators?
I mean, it was full, I mean, like you said, full on domination. I mean, it's amazing that, again, we're going to have stuff to talk about, obviously, in terms of like stuff that has gone wrong. Obviously, the Lotto Line had their issues yesterday, plenty of them, but on this night, it didn't matter because they got scoring from the rest of the lineup, which is been the whole problem that we've been going back to for years with this team. Yeah. Is that if your top guys aren't scoring, you're not going to win. You generally are expected not to win. But last night was the rare night where the supporting cast showed up and they made a difference for in a huge way. I mean, Brandon Sutter, hat-trick out of nowhere, Baton Rouge just playing on repeat in the locker room after that game, I'm sure. I mean, he just comes out of nowhere just as to have like the single greatest game of his career on a night where the guy who's often maligned for making that contract signing, really needed him to step in. Really needed to step in. Yeah, overall they got great contributions from everybody that they needed to, and especially management needed to, and yeah, overall they just played a really good game, and there are so many goals and moments that you could pick out of that game that were big and huge in their own different ways. And I almost actually want to ask you, like, if you were to pick like a goal or like a moment of the night, what was the one for you? Which was the big one?
Well, I would say for me personally, it was the Höglander effort into the diving pass to Tanner Pearson to get his first of the season, or whatever it was, first in a few games. I don't know where he's at.
Fantastic. But he's leading the Calder race or something.
That effort was pretty much everything that the Canucks fans that are like freaked out about Elias Pettersson, that's what they're hoping to see from him soon, because man, the kid's like work rate is just unbelievable, and you could see it on every single shift in this game. Like like, man, eventually this effort has to pay off. He's got to score or assist or something. Like, there's no way all this like wasted or this energy is going to go to waste. Like, it's got to capitalize somehow. And then it's of course like this gorgeous effort where he like wins a puck battle, chips it to himself, races down the boards, and then like while diving after drawing in 2 attackers, like just casually one arms a pass to a wide open Pearson to just like shelf it over Matt Murray, who was absolute garbage yesterday.
Oh, so I have plenty to say on Matt Murray.
You're the goalie guy, and we'll get into him in a bit. But yeah, that was my highlight of the night. Obviously, there's like, you know, the Sutter hat trick which is just like the funniest thing ever.
Yes.
But yeah, so what was yours as?
So for me, and I'm saying this not because I think for most people, obviously it's the Sutter hat trick because how, again, it's a full moon night when you get something like that happening, right? It's a crazy moment. But it obviously is going to get as much attention as possible. So I'm going to go in a different direction. And I'm gonna pick out a guy who you've been giving a lot of credit to over as many of our episodes, Mr. Olli Juolevi, getting his first NHL goal just on a booming shot from the blue line.
That was really great to see, just because like he scored and he was so sheepish about it, and like he kept doing this thing where he's like, you know, like
he's like,
like the
you guys, you guys,
like it's Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs bashful, like he's kicking his foot in the dirt and he's just like, oh shucks, fellas, I didn't mean to score. Like, it was really great as someone who's like watched them the last 2 seasons and been like, man, I have my doubts. Like, I didn't mean to sound like Meryl Streep in Doubt, but I had such great doubts. You won't understand that reference. Anyone who's seen the movie Doubt will maybe know. So like the 1% of our audience might know that reference, but
I'm sure we got some movie buffs.
I hope so, because that's a really good reference. It's a great movie, but I had tons of doubts just because he was burned on the outside so often that his turning speed, like he's going to get destroyed by like any NHL forward with speed. And we saw that multiple times against the Oilers. We saw it even again against the Flames a few times by Rasmus Andersson and Elias Lindholm. And for him to have like a pretty calm game where no one on the Sens is really even trying to beat him on the outside, he's winning all his puck battles, he's making smooth passes, and then after a very smooth, calm game, he just like tees one up from the blue line and beats like Murray like block or glove side, and he's just completely clueless. That's great for him because it's like been like a brutal journey. Like, he was drafted 2016. It is January 26th, 2021. We're like 5 months away from it being 6 years or 5 years away. Like, that's a long road to get to your first NHL goal, and you could see it on his face how like happy he was and how relieved he was. And props.
And it wasn't a bad one either. It was a good shot.
No, it was a great shot.
It wasn't just a completely weird knuckle puck or anything.
Yeah.
And like you said, he had a steady game. Like, I don't think it's too crazy to say that. I mean, he just looked like an NHL defenseman, which is what you've been waiting for.
That's the thing is
that's the big thing.
He didn't stand out in like a way where you're like, oh, he's going to be in NHL forever. He just had a fine game, which is like the kinds of games he needs to have from here on out. But the problem is, like,
it's just frankly what the Canucks need right now. You only need steady. You need steady. You need not so much risk necessarily, especially on that bottom group. And he looked solid as a rock. He was the more comfortable guy on his pairing. I mean, there was like the whole thing with
when you're paired with Myers, like
with Myers, and wasn't there like the whole thing where Juolevi did the Tyler Myers slide, but actually executed it correctly?
Yes.
And there you go. Like, he's doing all the things that you want out of the other guy who you're paying a lot more money to, and there he is. And there's Olli Juolevi looking like a guy who belongs in the lineup on a regular basis, and that was fantastic.
Obviously, like the asterisk for me is like, obviously, like the Sens don't have the kind of forward or offensive talent that like the Oilers or the Flames have. So like they're not threatening Juolevi by burning him on the outside and like making him look like a complete idiot. So there is that asterisk, like, you know, there are still some glaring holes in his game that obviously need to be fixed and are in a huge work of progress. But you look at his game against Montreal on Saturday, and he had that one play where he queued up a huge bomb from the left wing that ricocheted off the post, the loudest ping like you'll ever hear this season. And then it immediately turns into a goal for the Habs, who capitalize on the rebound. And
like such bad luck.
Like just like the worst luck. And like any other coach would be like, well, Juolevi should have got back faster, so I'm going to scratch him. But no, Green sticks with him. He has a completely fine game against a really unintimidating Senators lineup. And he's rewarded with his first NHL goal. Again, still a lot of work to really get there where you're like, he is going to be an NHLer full time. But it's little steps like these. It's the little things.
One step at a time.
We should have called this the Little Things Cast, because like we're all about the little things.
I feel like that would be I feel like people would think that means something else. I don't think that would mean that might be misinterpreted a little bit. I'm okay with the name we've got compared to that one.
The Little Things Podcast, brought to you by Armor All Hot Dogs
and Manscaped.
And Manscaped. We are not sponsored by Manscaped, so strip that from the record so we don't get sued.
But hey, if you guys want to, Manscaped at DM us, you totally can.
Tell them to slide in our DMs.
Yeah, and it's amazing how on basically any other game that Juolevi goal is probably the big goal of the night. It's probably the highlight. But he just happened to do it on a night where Brandon Sutter decided to turn into Connor McDavid for 60 minutes.
Where the middle six decided to basically make up for everything that the Lotto Line had not been doing for pretty much since the start of the season. And when I say that, I don't mean like all three of them, because I do think that Besser has been probably a top 5 forward for the Canucks. Unfortunately, he's on a line with 2 players who have looked like complete ass all season.
They're just they're starting in a weird spot. We'll have a lot to talk about with them for sure.
Yeah, but like, I mean, we can get into the Lotto Line right away.
Do we don't want to butter everybody up with more good things, or before we get into into the dark part of the story?
Let's quickly get into the Lotto Line just before I forget like all the little points I have, and then we'll wrap it around with Nils Höglander because I love that kid.
Yes.
But the Lotto Line, I looked at the natural stat trick stats after the game, and it was like Elias Pettersson spent most of his time against the Senators' middle 6 in matchups. So it was like Nick Paul, Artem Ansimov, and Chris Tierney or something like that. Completely fine NHLers, but like they're not, the McDavid line. You know what I mean? No. It's not like the top line versus top line. He's getting like favorable matchups, and he was getting caved. Like significantly caved. Like he had, I think against Goodbranson, like Eric Goodbranson of Vancouver Canucks fame, I think he had 2 shot attempts for and 8 against in like 6 minutes of shared ice time. Like that is about as like alarm bells ringing you can get when it comes to Pettersson's play from like the past like 7 games. Like I don't know what's up with him. I don't know if his play is tied into Miller's play or vice versa, because from the get-go on yesterday's game, Monday, Miller was like pissed off from the start, according to Thomas Drance, from like the warm-ups.
Yeah, some people gave Drance real like flack about mentioning that, which is great. That's
the dumbest thing ever. Like,
it's ridiculous because it's not like he's being like, oh, this guy looks like he's gonna be trash tonight or something, or giving like an opinion. He's literally just saying, hey, he looks frustrated.
Yeah,
and that is something you should look out for. Body language for all the people who are always like, it's not about it's about the eye test. Those people like that's if there's a reason to look at kind of like eye test stuff, that's one of them. Body language is important. Body language is a big thing. One of the things I brought up with the Canucks during the playoffs is that when they were doing well, like during that whole playoff, they looked like they were having a hell of a time. They looked like they were having fun, and I think that and I don't think that and I don't think it's a coincidence that they did so well, and I think those two correlate. Even a little
like
bit,
even
that
though
they're
they were
enjoying
getting
themselves.
even though they were getting completely caved in by like the Knights, like even like their post game videos of them in the locker room, like they look like a cohesive unit that was there together and like all that. But if you have JT Miller, who's supposed to be like one of your on ice leaders, and he's like taking a bunch of garbage penalties and like slamming his stick into the net, breaking it, and then hucking it behind him, almost hitting a ref. Like in the second period, when like you have like 1 goal lead,
Yeah.
like what are you doing? Like, chill
it,
out.
it's I wonder, like, I do wonder about the whole, like, if it is, I respect the whole he cares enough that it's pissing him off. I do think
Sure.
that's, I would be concerned if, say, things were going that poorly and it just looked like it didn't matter, like it just kind of, he just got, but I guess
Right.
it depends. It's kind of like there's a fine line. There's like a line. It's a spectrum, right? There's like a good middle ground where you're still like upset that you're not doing well, but maybe
Right.
you're just not like
Yeah.
breaking everything in sight. And I mean, and actually I have a tweet to kind of help like illustrate just how much they've been struggling right now. This is from before yesterday, but this is a Greg Wyshynski tweet. According to Evolving Hockey, the Canucks line of Brock Besser, Pettersson, and Miller has an expected goals for percentage at 24.7%, which is second worst for any line in the NHL that's played over 25 minutes together at 5-on-5. And that was
Yikes.
before yesterday. And
Yeah.
yesterday got worse.
Yes.
It's really concerning from a whole lot of points, because again, I mean, yeah, yesterday the Canucks got extremely lucky, but also it just happened that all of these supporting casts where them all having their big night happened to correlate all basically on the same night,
Right.
and they were able to completely make up for the lack of Lotto Line scoring, but it doesn't bode well going forward. And
No.
I think and now you're getting almost to a crossroads here if you're Travis Green, to the point of like, is this just a matter? Do you wait it out and see if they'll get over it and struggle, or do you make the, albeit more risky, what seems like the smarter but more risky move, frankly, which is to split them up and to start playing them on different lines? Is that kind of where we're leading, or do you think that this is just is this a funk that they're just going to they'll get out of sooner rather than later?
Green strikes me as the type that, like, if he was to break up the Lotto Line permanently, he would have no choice but to like fudge every other lineup to make
That's
it like
the toughest part.
to split it up in such a way where like the line still made sense. But I don't think they're deep enough or I don't think their chemistry is good enough where they can just like take Besser and then shake up the Höglander, Horvat, Pearson line, and all of a sudden it's going to be just as effective. Like,
Right.
obviously chemistry is a big part of his team. So I think what likely will happen is he's just going to leave things the same and probably hope that they just score their way or like eventually get themselves out of their own slump on their own. I was kind of the mindset, like after seeing some of those stats that Pettersson had against like I'm not joking, like this is basically an AHL team with like a couple tweener NHL
Brady
vets.
Tkachuk.
Like
It's Brady Tkachuk. It's Thomas Chabot. It's it's Tim Stützle.
You have
and
Norris,
who's
Matheson,
injured at the time. Yeah, they have their young guys. They're where they are right now is where the Canucks were, I think, the year before Pettersson almost. Like, they're kind of at that spot where they had, like, Horvat and Besser were both kind of just dragging a bit of a sad team.
But they don't have the
over the
Sedins
finishing
to,
line.
like, take them over the hump,
with the Sedins.
right?
Right, exactly. So they're kind of in that spot right now.
Yeah, they're in that awkward stage where it's like they don't have any high-end skill to basically take them over the hump to like work through some of the awkwardness. They're basically dependent on a bunch of U23 players to score their way away out of their issues. And they had something they have to do because Matt Murray has been like just god awful in their games this season.
So, yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
It's just a concern. It's concerning mostly with Pettersson just because I don't know what else there is to do here. I mean,
Yeah.
It's tough because, we all know what he's capable of. We know when he finds the switch, he's like he is one of the best players in the National Hockey League.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess you do wonder if there's like something else going on, because humans
Injuries,
are complicated.
maybe? I don't know.
Injuries, humans are complicated. They're, you never know.
You have
never
no
know what's
idea,
happening
like-
with people, especially like you never know if like maybe just like things are going not so well off the ice or something. You don't know.
Yeah, you have
this
no-
is the
like,
kind of stuff that we don't have any
It's
control
human
over,
natural
and they don't have any.
to
Right.
have things going on in life. It is just like so concerning because he is a guy who has set such a high bar for the fan base with his like raw skill and his talent, that to now be 8 games in and coming off of a game against like one of the worst teams that Canada's seen in the last like 5 years, to see him come away from that without a point, like that's like he's at 1 point or 1 goal, 1 assist or something right now. Like it's not like Brandon Sutter has 4 goals
Yeah.
than Pettersson right now. It's like the
One of the
alarm bells are like kind of ringing, but they're a bit in the distance, and everyone is kind of just like got fingers in their ears right now because they're just like holding on for the hope that he's going to come out of it and score his way out of it. And like that's kind of what you hope happens, because you can't guarantee or you can't rely on games like Monday where the bottom 6 or the middle 6 can outscore away their problems. Like that's not going to happen all the time. Sutter isn't going to score a hat trick every night. So like Tyler Mott isn't going to score a goal every single game. Jay Beagle isn't going to be driving end to end to set up Mott at the net front. Like that's not going to happen every single game. And it can't be like on Nils Höglander to carry the team's like 2-way matchup line every night. Like can't happen. So everyone is just like waiting with bated breath that like he figures it out, or Miller snaps out of whatever's got him down and they can kind of put something together. But like, yeah, it's just not encouraging in the slightest.
Yeah, and I mean, one other thing that's worth bringing up, and I say this again as somebody who agreed with this particular decision from management, which was that, and this was, I believe, in a Patrick Johnson article. He talked recently. He talked about how when things were going tough for Pettersson in the last couple seasons, the guy he turned to was Jacob Markstrom, who's not there anymore. He was like I believe they used the term like he was like an older brother for Elias. And I mean, again, I say that as someone who thought moving on from Markstrom was the right decision. But that is a problem that if the support system that a player or a person has disappears, how do you find that again?
Yeah, like that's pretty much what our last episode was just ranting about the head shaking that we'd been doing in the off season, where all these guys who were renowned as like the actual core locker room pieces and mentors to the young core were shipped away for nothing. Or not even shipped away. Shipped away implies that they gave them up. No, they'd let them go because they didn't have the cap space through terrible contracts dished out over the last couple of years. And like, I know a lot of people are going to be like, oh, losing Tanev and Markstrom isn't going to impact like the morale of players. And it's like, well,
it impacts them it certainly impacts them if you're not able to replace them with decent people in their stead. Because from the way the players look at it, yes, they did add Nate Schmidt and Braden Holtby, 2 very good pickups, two pickups I liked and I still like. But to the players, if you're a player, you're looking at that room and you're seeing, well, that makes up for two people. Like that maybe makes up for Levo leaving, and that's pretty much it. Like that might be it, because like that you look at, well, what with Toffoli, you look at Tanev, even and again, I thought moving on from Tanev was the right decision, but still, if you're the players, it looks different. It's different to you, and it does matter because they set a culture and they set a support group in the locker room that keeps the players' morales and the spirits high. So it's a matter of, I guess, in a way, it's almost, this is, I guess, a kind of a hard growing up moment for the younger guys, which is now that they kind of have to learn how to be their own support system, and that they are now the leaders. Then that it's their job to do the same for almost the younger guys, even though they're young themselves. Like Pettersson's extremely young, but there are going to be some players coming in sooner rather than later that are going to be looking up to him, ask for him for for how to lead a team.
Yeah, like the hand-holding period's kind of over for them, right? So like the other side of you goes like, okay, you don't need Markstrom and Tanev to, hold your hand through the league. Like, you guys are big boys. You guys are stars. Like, you should be able to, push on through and find a way yourself to battle through this adversity and get like return to form. And that kind of brings me to the positive sides of the Canucks lineup from Monday. Is someone who doesn't need his hand held at all whatsoever.
Ooh, not right now.
That's Nils Höglander, the Hog Watch himself, who is pretty much just like the Canucks de facto best winger right now. He is unfreaking believable. Like, just looking at like from a eye test point of view, from an underlying numbers point of view, like every time the kid's feet touch the ice, he is must watch hockey. His speed is unbelievable. His hands are good. His battle is like unbelievable for a guy who's only 5'9". I don't know. What are your thoughts on him? Because I came away just like being like, I was in disbelief that the Canucks, like Jeff Merrick said it the other day when it was like, are really Canucks another one? Yeah. It was kind of like, okay, like he's got his one goal, like whatever. There's still a whole season to go before we like evaluate. But we're 8 games in, and I'm dead set that the kid is like top 3 for the Canucks right now. Like, the Canucks do not win yesterday's game without his effort or what he was creating in the offensive zone for his team. No one's battling as hard as he does on every shift to retain puck possession or create. Like, he is basically what I hope Pettersson's form returns to be, because that's how Pettersson used to play. He was tenacious on the pucks, even for a guy who wasn't that big, and that's just not there. That fire isn't there at all. And thank God for Höglander, because otherwise this would be another miserable episode. Yeah. And I'm kind of done with those. And I'm not for Nils Höglander. So I'll go back to your thoughts on his play.
With Höglander, I was gonna almost go in a different comparison, especially because he's the guy who's always going like mucking in the trenches a little bit more along the boards and everything, and he gets to the front of the net. He's the guy that everyone thought Jake Virtanen was gonna be. He's that guy. He's that guy, and possibly and possibly more, because he plays with such tenacity, and he really is he is the point of the kind of player that you need for a supporting group. I don't think Nils Höglander will ever necessarily be a guy that would lead a line on his own. Like, he can never, he's not the guy that you build a line around, but he is the guy that if you put him with a great player, he's going to
be an elite complementary piece, basically.
Exactly.
He will probably elevate any line he's sitting on just by his work rate alone. But like, you wouldn't be like, okay, we're going to put Chris Tierney and Artem Ansimov with you so that you can make them 50 goal scorers. Like, that's not what you would use them for. You would be like, okay, you're going to complement Horvat and Pearson, and between the three of you, you guys will probably put up 20 goals apiece.
Yeah, he and Horvat are making right now, in particular, are making each other better, and I think that's like, I don't think you look at Bo Horvat right now. I mean, the guy is tied for the league lead in points with 10, which has never been a thing Bo Horvat has ever, I think, been in the conversation of at any point. Even
he's had such an unreal start, and like you can almost be like, it's finally the winger for Horvat, and it's just wild to me that it's like it took Eriksson being too old to really just like earn his spot by virtue of experience, that this 20-year-old undersized kid that like on any other green season likely wouldn't have gotten a shot.
Yeah. not to pick on Jake or anything, but remember at the beginning of the season when we thought that was it's like, well,
yeah,
I guess Jake is going to be on line too, but nope, not anymore. Nope. We have a very clear winner in that race.
No, it's kind of funny.
Höglander's tied for third in rookie points with 4 right now. The only 2 people ahead of him are Kirill Kaprizov, who's amazing and actually making the Wild interesting to watch.
27 years old.
Yes, and he's an older guy. And Ty Smith, who is a defenseman that I have never heard of, but
for the Devils, right?
Yeah, for the Devils. Yeah, Höglander's tied with and Höglander is only tied with Josh Norris on the Sens, and then another guy who I'd never heard of, Pius Sutter, who scored a hat trick. Who scored a hat trick the other day against the Red Wings, asterisk.
Yeah.
But still, I was like, wow, we're getting to, some teams are getting into, that rebuild point where even I, person who watches hockey religiously, has no clue who they are. Yeah. But, yeah, Höglander is playing such a perfect complementary piece. And you hope that this is not just, a hot start, and it's not... Obviously, there's going to be a bit of a point, especially in the rookie year, where teams start maybe paying a little bit more extra attention to him. They might not be as much right now because he's not a Pettersson or a Besser or a Horvat. They're maybe kind of leaving him...
Right. They're not
leaving him as kind of secondary. Yeah. And we saw that with all the other Canucks rookies that have come through, where they would all start red hot because they're great and nobody was paying attention to them.
Nobody had the book on him yet, yeah.
Yeah, but then later they started to the production just crept down a little bit as they went, just because that's just a matter of being so good that teams need to force themselves to start paying more attention to you. And that's probably going to happen with Höglander at some point, but that doesn't mean you should worry at any point. He is showing exactly what the Canucks need, which is a guy who can fit perfectly in that top 6. And then you can really start looking at now, how do we start improving, say, the third line and adding more scoring to those lines as well. And although last night that wasn't so much of the case.
No, but when I was doing my game thought, so after I finish clipping the last bits of the game, I'll always go through my game thoughts, and I'll just kind of think okay, what were some of the what moments I thought about during this game about certain players. And then I was like, what about Jake? And then I was like, oh, right. Jake Virtanen was in the lineup last night.
I totally forgot he was
completely
playing.
forgot he was playing.
Last 2 games in a row, I completely was like, oh yeah, Jake Virtanen exists. Where is he? Because I hadn't even heard his name all night. I didn't even remember it.
No, I was kind of slapping my head. I'm like, how could I forget that Jake isn't, or as Jake was playing? And then I thought about, okay, what were some plays that he had? And there was one where he stood in front of the net while the Sens had possession and were leading a breakout. And then the other play where he was standing in front of the net and the Sens were waiting to do a breakout. And I was just like, okay, so if he's not doing anything in the play with puck possession, then why is he in the lineup? So get Goddard in there.
Yeah.
Why is the team?
I don't understand why
team sold on it or getting rid of Goddard. I don't quite get that.
I saw somebody was like, oh, maybe Gaudette's gonna ask for a trade. I'm like, I mean, it's been 1 game, maybe chill.
Yeah, it's been 2 games. He was benched most of the playoffs, and he was fine.
Yeah. Was he benched most of the playoffs? I only remember 1 game.
I think he played 10 games total.
Is that really it? That's shocking.
He had that awful game against Minnesota in the first game of the series, and then he was benched for most of the series until he came back a bit later.
Yeah, I don't love that decision, because I think one of the best things about Goddard is that he brings energy to his line when he's.
And that's why I would say switch out him with Virtanen, because Virtanen is anti-energy.
Yes,
and he Virtanen is someone who on his best nights he might carry the puck down the wing and get a shot off that actually matters, or he'll have that one play like he had with Goddard where he actually did a no-look feed to him for a one-timer and it almost resulted in a goal. But
yeah, we gave him huge props for that. We're thrilled about that.
But those are 2 plays in 8 games. And I will take Goddard busting his ass to try and make something happen in both ends of the ice versus a guy who is obviously needing help from a better piece to produce. Right. And I don't know, I didn't notice him Monday
neither.
at all.
I
straight
completely
forgot
agree.
he was there. I would hope. I don't hope. I don't like asterisk. When I say like I want someone to be subbed out, that's not me being like I don't like this person and I hope they fail and they don't make money and they're like
Yeah.
a loser for the rest of their life. I'm looking at like the evaluation of a team and what contributes to a team's success. And if that means subbing out Jake Virtanen so that Adam Gaudette, Brandon Sutter, and Tyler Mott are a line, sure, try it. You have nothing to lose at this point because Brandon Sutter isn't a guy who is a puck distributor. His whole game has been he gets the puck and then he somehow, as like a guy who is slower than molasses, creates enough space to get off these highlight reel goals. And he's done it three times against the Senators, and then he did it like earlier
once against the Canadians.
Yeah, like by all accounts, he shouldn't be doing that, but he does manage to pull it off because that's been his MO his entire career.
Yeah, just every now and then he just decides, oh, it's time for me to be elite foundational status and just goes off.
Well,
he
doesn't use me.
Yeah, I guess it's my time to save the day again.
Yeah.
He just puts on his Superman cape and he's just ready to go. He's Clark Kent. He's just waiting. He just goes like the phone booth and then rushes back out on the ice for his big goal.
Yeah, and that's sort of what like everyone's like critique of Jake is like he's never gonna single-handedly take over a game. The one time off the top of my head I can think where like Jake Virtanen took over a game was in the preseason last year when everyone said he was fat and out of shape and like came into camp looking like shit. So they sent him to the Calgary with all the AHL players to play an exhibition game.
Oh, yeah.
And they were losing. And then he like single-handedly scored like 2 goals like on his own through his own effort to force overtime and win the game for them against like Calgary's actual NHL roster. Yeah. And that's the one time off the top of my head I can be like, yeah, that game was because of Jake. I've not felt that way once this entire season so far, and we're 8 games deep. And kind of like Pettersson, you just have to wonder, okay, what game is it where it's going to kick in, or when is it going to click? And it's just going to be like, oh, this is the X player of last season.
Yeah. See, the problem with Jake, the problem with Jake at the end of the day is we've been kind of asking that question with Jake for like 5 years. Like we've been asking it for years. When is it going to click? When is he finally? And last year he was good. Last year he was very good.
Yeah. The coaching staff got almost 20 goals out of him through like some brilliant coaching for a full 82 game season. Like all the props in the world.
Yeah, and he did well, and they found him a role that he flourished in, more or less. But this year, especially the team is struggling. That it's even more important that if a guy like Jake is not clicking and not making things happen, even if it's just because, even if it's not a matter of like with Gaudette, where sometimes say he tries something risky and it just doesn't work for him, especially. Because sometimes he does it and it pays off. That's better than just kind of being out there and just taking up ice time. And again, some players are steady enough that it doesn't matter. The less you hear them, maybe that's a good thing. But with Jake, it's kind of you need to be noticing him more than what you're getting out of him. Yeah. And right now, Gaudette seems like he would be much better for the team, and he would bring the team much better. Even if you don't want to put him in the faceoff dot. Throw him on the wing. Go for it. It could really, especially with Mott and Sutter, it could give a little bit more juice and a little bit more of a youthful side to it that I think they could use. Although, again, last night they didn't. Last night they were good on their own.
Yeah, there's like all obviously like some massive asterisks about the way we evaluate the team when it comes to the Ottawa series in a vacuum, just because like
that's the tough part.
It's comparing like a team that's trying to legitimately contend for the playoffs and like a team that's just like a bunch of kids like learning the ropes. So it's like a part of me wants to be like, okay, like now is the time for players like Jake to like kind of just like show up and, prove their worth kind of.
Yes.
And since like that first game, like I didn't come away thinking like he could. The other part of me is like, okay, get Gaudette in there and throw him on the PK.
Yeah.
Like he said all in his preseason training, like, part of what I want to add to my game is more like a better two-way foundation. He wants to try penalty killing and be more useful to the team that way. And in the camp, they did actually run a bunch of the rookies, the young guys, through roles that typically belong to Mott or Beagle or Sutter. I'm assuming in the off chance that one of those three gets injured and they need someone else to slide into that role. And a part of me is like, okay, it's Senators. They're bad. They are very, very, very bad. So
why not
get Goddard in there and just throw him on the PK, and who cares what happens, because Matt Murray is in net. So you can make things up easily if you guys at least have one line going.
Yeah.
So on the note of Matt Murray, you being the goalie guy, do you have anything you would like to say about this contentious goaltender?
So with Matt Murray had a bad game last night. Like, I mean, that's no secret. He had a tough night, especially compared to Thatcher Demko, who had his best game of the season, 28 saves. He looked fantastic.
Yes, he looked very good.
So it was all the more damning for Murray. I feel, and I will say, I saw a tweet earlier today from, I believe it was Canucks Army guy, Stefan
Roger.
Stefan Roger, yes, I love his work. I love his writing. Yeah. But he did say the phrase that in relation to Matt Murray. He did say like the one thing that always annoys me, which is goalies are voodoo. And he talked about how Matt Murray, 2-time Cup champion, to this just proves that goalies are voodoo. I have to tell you, it's not true. Goalies are not voodoo. We're just There is a method to our madness. With Murray, and I again, we've talked about this, I think, on the show early on, how with Murray, he really was a guy who, he's like serviceable. He's okay, but I think a lot of people got very overhyped on what Matt Murray could be based on the fact that he was playing for the Penguins, who had at the time one of the best defense groups in the NHL. Yeah, and not only does that mean you're facing less shots, it means the shots you're facing, generally speaking, are less dangerous, because you're not going to be taking, because again, they're not putting together as many, giving up as many crazy breakaways like the Canucks have been giving up of late. Yeah. And the thing with Murray is that he's like he can be a starting goalie. He's just more of a serviceable, fits the type, fits the role, will take up the ice time kind of goalie. He's not going to lose you games necessarily. Last night he really was struggling, but generally speaking, in a general sense, Matt Murray as a goalie, he's not going to lose you games, but he's also not going to like steal you a bunch either. He's very, very much in that he fits. If you've got a great defense, he's perfect. He's a perfect goalie for that situation. If you've got a great blue line, he will be perfectly manageable. Yeah. And I think I would put Jordan Binnington in a similar camp here, where they're guys who do very well if your blue line is good, and that is a skill. That is a handy skill to have. But if you don't have if you don't have a good blue line, they're not going to be able to bail you out night after night, like say a Jacob Markstrom would, or and that's kind of what Matt Murray is. The problem with the thing that Ottawa paid for him like he's a guy who can steal you games.
They paid him like he was Markstrom or something, which is
exactly
very far from what he is.
Exactly. Matt Murray is an okay goalie. I'm not saying he's bad. I'm not saying he sucks.
I'm saying he sucks.
You're saying he sucks. I am not saying he sucks. I'm saying this as somebody who's been saying this for years. Like, this isn't a new thing that I've talked about. With Murray, this was something you could kind of see. You could kind of see the little like red flags coming up of if you sat down and watched the game tape, even from his years where they were winning cups in Pittsburgh, I think you could have seen the red flags coming. Mm-hmm. There were like just in some of the ways he handles rebounds and everything else.
Yeah.
But and again, Ottawa is kind of and I think Ottawa's learning a little bit the hard way that that's just not what kind of goalie he is and what they kind of need right now. Like, it's not like with, say, like Craig Anderson, who is relatively good at, here, you can just throw 50 shots on net at me every single night and I'll be fine. Yes, exactly. with Craig Anderson. Matt Murray is much more of a, if you need me to make a few saves a night, I will get them for you. But don't ask me to stop a bunch of shots. Now, he could work on that. He's still young enough that could change. But now, that's not the kind of goalie he is. And last night was a big proof of that. I mean, there were a lot of chances where the Canucks were getting into the slot. And props to the Canucks, because they were not doing very well at getting shots in close. And it's something that I've talked about before, that I really want to see them put more low shots in close and try and get rebounds from there. Last night, they did it to a great degree. That could also just be due to the fact that they were playing a not great defense.
I was going to say,
but they still did it, which
they worked on every goal, basically. Like, they were, like, the work rate from the team in general, like, outside of the Lotto Line, I think was, like, through the roof, and that's what paid off in so many goals for that. And the face-off dot, like, they were just clowning on the Sens, like, all night. Like, they were just controlling the puck. The only times where the Canucks weren't really in possession of the puck was either off of getting stripped in puck battles or off of dump-ins from the neutral zone, which they honestly probably could have avoided doing because they were just wrecking the Sens with possession. And yeah, like some of those goals that like Murray let in, like hard to fault him. Like if Shabbat just flubs the pass point blank in front of you and it results in a like scoring chance, like how do you react to like your team's best defender basically just like having a brain fart and just handing the puck over to the opposition like from point blank range? That's tough. We've definitely clowned on the Senators a bit in this show, but I do feel like we should note like their good players had an unusually bad night themselves. They kind of had the game that the Canucks had a couple nights ago against Montreal. They kind of had that moment. Actually, I think Pierre LeBrun tweeted something today. Like yesterday, Vancouver was melting down. Now Ottawa's doing the same thing today, which to me is almost funny because I'm like, really? Why are you melting down? You guys knew you weren't going to be that good. Like maybe he asked Mike Babcock about that, and that's what he said.
Why you gotta bring that up?
Hey, Pierre LeBrun thought that was a good idea, so I'm gonna take any shot I can at Pierre LeBrun for making such a dipshit article.
Oh dear. Well, I guess he's never coming on the show.
Darn.
But yeah, with Murray, it's just to kind of finish up on the goaltending thing.
Yeah,
I think especially because with Ottawa, I did think that it was a decent pickup for them just because it was going to be a little bit of an improvement from what they had. But the contract, I think, is going to be a tough one to swallow down the line, especially because I think they have like Marcus Högberg and I think it's Philip Gustafsson.
Who was
they're supposed to be
in the AHL.
Yeah, they're supposed to be pretty good goaltending prospects, and I've liked kind of at least what I've seen from Högberg over the last couple of years. So it is surprising to me that they signed him that they signed Murray for so long in such term, because I think those guys might take over sooner rather than later.
Yeah, and you're not going to be able to trade Murray.
Yeah, that's a tough contract for them to get out of. Maybe they kind of just I mean, at the time, they also were, like, I think way below the cap floor, so maybe they were just kind of trying to, like...
add their stats a bit.
Yeah,
I mean...
So maybe that's it, but...
They're basically banking on, like you said, they're basically banking on them suddenly developing a decent enough decor that Matt Murray's, like, glaring weaknesses are covered by a good defense.
Which could happen. They have some good prospects coming up the pipeline.
They have Shabbat, they have Brandstrom, they have...
Brandstrom.
Oh, God, what's that other kid's name?
They have some good names. They have a lot of guys who, if you give them the time... I mean, they don't have Dylan Tomello anymore, do they? He was because he was good.
He was decent now, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was decent. I don't know why they got rid of him.
Yeah, he had really good underlying numbers. He would have actually been a good
help for them last night. Yeah. The Canucks would have been good too.
I would have.
Yeah. But I saw him with San Jose when he was just kind of getting going. Dylan DeMello had his good moments there.
And then he got traded, and the first thing he was a part of was the taxi cab thing.
Oh, that was a tough go. Poor Ottawa. I'm so sorry I'm
so
sorry
good.
for their fans at the end of the day. At the end of the day, their fans are the ones who are really taking it. But hey, they've got a good core. If any Ottawa fans listen, the solace to take
Jake
right now
Sanderson.
is that they've got there you go.
That's who it was. I knew it was
there
someone.
it
Yeah,
is.
yeah.
They've got plenty coming up.
They've
They got plenty
people
coming.
It's just
They're going to be fine. They're going to be fine.
Will they be ready to elevate their decor by the time Matt Murray is like still in the midst of his deal?
They'll be fine, provided a certain owner does not ruin it for them. They'll be fine.
That's a big ask.
But yeah, and then you compare that to Demko, who looked very good last night. Like, that was the thing. I've seen a lot of people already going like, oh, now you give Demko the next game and reward him for the great night. And I'm like, no, just leave them. Keep rolling it. Keep rolling the goalies the way they are.
Yeah,
I know a lot.
Keep them fresh, dude. Keep alternating.
I know a lot of people are weird about it because it's a very new school way to treat your goalies this way.
Yeah.
But trust me, it pays off, especially because it gives the goalies the time to mentally prepare for the game before. Yeah. It's nice knowing that you're almost guaranteed starts. You're still gonna work for it every single game because you know that if things start going really, really south, they could just go to the other guy. But it's really it's really a confidence booster knowing where and when your starts are coming. It's a really good thing, and it really helps you mentally prepare for games that way. And it keeps things healthy, and it keeps things really even keeled for the goalies, and I think it'll pay off in the long run. Especially because now that they're back home and they've been home for a while, I think Holtby and Demko are both getting regular time to work with Ian Clark, which is really good for them, and they know when they're going to get that time to do it, and it's helping them. And they're looking quite good. They're looking like they're playing. It's picking up. It's picking up in their favor. Their numbers don't show it right now, but it will. Right. It will pay off down the line, I think.
Right. Well, I think that about covers the Canucks' surprisingly fun game to watch. Do you have any other final thoughts you want to get to? You look like you want to just bring something up.
From a Canucks standpoint, like, are we jumping into like regular stuff after this? Or?
Yeah, we'll just hop into some NHL news.
Okay. The one thing I wanted to touch on that I feel is important is Elias Pettersson did switch agents. Now,
I do have an update on this, apparently.
Allegedly. Let's hear.
So apparently he wasn't switching agencies. He wasn't like firing his existing agent and moving to someone else. What he was doing was his existing agent was actually kind of negotiating a way where he would fall under the umbrella of the CAA agency or whatever, still be Pettersson's agent, but have like the backing of this big giant firm to help him moving forward. So it isn't like an outright, like, I'm firing my guy and going with like this mega agent who represents, all the guys making big cash. At least that's what I heard while listening to 1040 today.
Okay, so this isn't you picked up a sudden scoop or anything. This is public info. Okay.
The only scoops I do are ice cream and Raisin Bran.
You do 3 scoops because you're just crazy like that.
Yeah,
there's 3 scoops of raisins.
I'm literally insane.
All raisins.
That would be the best cereal.
That would be the best. I don't think it's cereal at that point. I think that's a box of raisins and milk.
It's just raisins coated in sugar and milk.
You could just do that. Regular. You don't even have to buy a cereal for that.
When your life is falling apart at 30 years old, that's the kind of meals you can have, and it'd be okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, other than that,
although it is worth noting that gives a lot of that still gives a lot of leeway, a lot of leverage to Pettersson and Hughes, and then I feel like we should still touch on the fact that yes, things have cooled off a little bit for Jim Betting, but let's be clear here. If you're listening to this and you don't live in Vancouver, you're not kind of like super tuned into like the radio stuff and everything. People are brazenly talking about the fact that a new guy's coming in.
Yeah.
Like the
scene is still very, very, very hot.
It's almost like people already, it's almost like it's already a foregone conclusion that he's getting fired, that Benning is going to get fired. It's just a matter of when, which is not good for him.
No, it's not a good look on the fan base either, too. Like, regardless, no one should be like, it's kind of,
but it's not even the fan base. Like, I heard people, like media people are openly talking about how, Mike Fuda, like this was in Elliot Friedman's 31 Thoughts today. Mike Fuda, the Canucks have approached Mike Fuda about possibly coming in.
Yeah.
Which is like such, it's like the worst kept secret in the world, which makes me wonder, like, it makes me almost feel bad for Jim Benning in a sense, just like, not in the sense of like, oh, he deserves to keep his job necessarily, but like take the knife out. Like, take the knife out. Don't just keep stabbing him with it. Like, this is
by that
just
same
mean.
token, on behalf of Linden and Judd Brackett, you'll be fine.
Yeah, you'll be fine.
People are talking about Mike Fuda and Gillis getting brought back and Dale Talon, for whatever reason, still being a thing in the NHL.
Oh God,
he'll survive.
Oh no!
I love that one tweet from Samantha CP_, where she's like,
yes.
If the replacement for Jim Benning is Dale Talon, I'll stick with Jim. Thanks. That's so
100% agree.
Yeah.
Fully agree.
I'll take another bunch of terrible deals if it means avoiding Dale Talon, trading Hughes for like Matt Martin in a pick.
100%. But I will say as well, I do think it's important to bring up the idea, like, if this is, I mean, where there's smoke, there's fire.
Yes.
And I mean, yeah, again, lots of media people are talking about it because, and they're not bringing it up because they just feel like it. They're bringing it up because they have info that would tell them, oh, this is,
they saw the hashtag. They saw,
this guy's in trouble. They have they have their sources that will tell them, yeah, this guy's in a lot of trouble.
Yeah.
So there's two things to keep in mind. Number one, the trade deadline is still in February. It's still, like, I think in late February. If ownership does not want to keep Jim Benning, and I know we've talked about the fact that, hey, don't make any panic moves. Mm-hmm. But if you're so unconfident in your general manager that you're already looking for the replacements,
usually a bad sign.
That's a bad sign, and that means you also should not have them at the trade deadline to make changes that you don't want. So if you're going to make a change, do it before the trade deadline at the very least, because there's no sense in giving them that extra window to say, make some other completely crazy change that could like end up screwing over the next guy, right? And make life more trouble for the next guy. So if you're already have that little confidence, and the thing, like the example that I come back to, like, this is kind of a bit of a different case, but I remember, like, there were a couple of years ago, there was like this playoff series between Calgary and Anaheim, where the Flames had lost the first 3 games in a row. Mike Smith was their starting goalie. He had looked really bad and had been pulled, I think, once or twice by this point. Mm-hmm. And the coach, who we all know here in Vancouver at the time, was Glenn Gulletson. Going into Game 4, he played Mike Smith again. He said, I'm going to play Mike Smith. He's my starting goalie. Yeah. About 5 minutes into the game, the Ducks score. It's 1-0. It's 1-0. It's only a 1-0 game. Like, it's 5 minutes in.
Yeah.
That's when Glenn Gulletson decides to take the hook and pull Mike Smith in favor of Chad Johnson, which was so stupid because it's like, okay, if you already have this little confidence that one goal was enough to tip the scales, why did you bother playing him? Why save yourself and him, the rest of the team, the embarrassment of pulling them 5 minutes into the game? If it was already if they were already on that razor thin an iceberg, just pull the plug. Don't drag it out and make it more painful than it has to be.
Yeah. So
if that is the case of where we're heading at this point, down the line, maybe things will change. But if it's that open a secret, don't just drag it out. Get it done before the trade deadline. Make a change And I guess I wanted to ask you just in the sense of if there was somebody who you would, if this is a foregone conclusion, let's just say it is. Let's just say for brain exercise, it is.
Exercise's sake, yeah.
For exercise, let's say it is. Is there somebody out there, either already in the Canucks system or someone outside or an outsider, that if you were in, like, part of the hiring committee, who is like the person that you'd be calling? So
I would put myself, if I'm putting myself in Aquilini's head right now, so I'm very Italian. I'm eating my spaghetti. I'm drinking my wine. And
oh God.
I have no faith in my current GM, Jim. I see Elias is struggling. Jersey sales are plummeting. Höglander's pretty fun.
My Canucks marketplace boxes aren't selling as many.
I'm thinking of putting umlauts on the O over Höglander so that I can then sell more jerseys to people that already bought them. And then I think, okay, is this the guy that I'm going to want to take my team to the playoffs again? Because I don't like that I had to basically put a cap on how much he could spend, because I think he's cost me $10 million in players that don't even play for me. Like, he's got Spooner, Berchi.
Oh my God, Spooner! I forgot about him.
Like, he cost him. I don't even know what. He's still in the books.
Oh my God!
I think another year actually. But it's like
player of 5 or 6 games, right?
Yeah, they
Spooner.
signed him for 17 games, if that, and then bought him out. So he had to pay out like all this cash to this guy who has no bearing on the team. The Ferland deal, it's uninsured, so he's spending cash on a guy that likely will never play for him under the remainder of the term of the deal. And so he's probably thinking, all right, I can't afford to hire another guy from the old boys club, but I need someone that knows our system enough that can, at least get us to the playoffs and has the contacts necessary without me spending an extra $5 million a year. So I would promote Chris Gear or Jonathan Wall, whoever's already there in AGM capacities, and promote them to the GM position, because you already have those guys' salaries on your books. So if you're using the shady kind of businessman approach, you're saying, okay, I'm going to promote you to an interim GM role. So that means I don't have to pay you a full GM's contract. So I'll give you like a slight raise, but I'm not going to pay you until you have like proof of concept. And then that way he's not like dipping into, the pocketbooks to pay 2 GMs, one of them to actually work and one of them not to work. He's basically paying people he would be paying for anyway to do more of what he was already getting out of them. So that would be probably what he would do for this season, depending on what happens at playoffs. If they make it, then you probably evaluate, okay, who's a forward-thinking GM, not of the old boys club, who can, do a quick cleanup to set us up and reload for next year. I don't think he's going to want a Dale Talon personally, just because
I hope not.
I don't think he wants a GM who's just going to blow it up with terrible trades and undo all the work that he's put into, rounding out his front office with like a bunch of video scouts and analytics guys. Like, it would be completely counterintuitive. So I would hope he would kind of go more progressive and forward thinking, but Aquilini's a wild card, man.
He is a bit of a wild card.
Fans called for Gillis to be fired because the team was looking like shit in the playoffs.
It worked.
And boom, it worked.
They missed with Torts. Yeah, it instantly worked.
They missed with Torts, and then it was like, okay, I'm going to hire Trevor Linden to be the face while we toil for a little bit and try to get back to playoffs right away. And then it didn't work for 7 years, so he gave the guy as much leash as possible, and it didn't work.
Yeah.
So, I mean, kudos to Jim for not having fans in the arena, because holy shit, could you imagine what the crowd would have done after that game against the Habs?
It would have been like it would have been
people
noisy.
Would have blowing up. It would have been
noisy in the wrong way for them. Yeah. I would say I think you're right. I think that is the way they're going to go, especially because I think to keep in mind the fact that the Canucks did just lay off a bunch of people during COVID.
Yes.
It would be for them to I think most important. I think even more importantly, for them to say do all that, then fire Jim Benning and hire some expensive outsider. Would be bad optics, very, very, very bad optics. So I think it is most likely that somebody from within the system is going to
it would be an
hired.
internal promotion for sure.
And even and I think I would say go far enough to say that it would be not even interim. Like it would be interim for the end of the year, but then in the off season they would just take that tag off. They just rip that tag right off.
Yeah, probably.
But if say I had blank check, it didn't matter, what have you, if we're just doing anybody out here, and they could just go for anybody. I know we've talked about this before, but I'm going to throw an interesting name out there that I don't think has been out there for a lot of people. Would they come? Probably not, but I'm going to throw it out anyway because there's somebody who I think it would be an interesting person to at least get an interview, which is Alexandra Mendrake.
Okay.
Yeah, she is the director of hockey administration for the Kraken. She previously had been like in analytics, in the analytics department for the Wild. And she had a huge hand in assembling the Kraken front office, including hiring Ron Francis as the GM.
Yeah, which was a bit kind of weird.
Which is weird, but also but it's also really interesting. I would say it's important. It's crazy that she was given that much power to actually basically pick who's going to be in charge of the management and everything, and pick their department, their scouting department, everything. Hired some really smart, progressive people. They've done a really good job at surrounding Ron Francis with like a very well-rounded staff of people with different thinking and different backgrounds, which I like.
And then let him hire all of his old hockey bros.
Did they? They didn't. Yeah. But they did not. But they didn't hire two. But they still have a good.
Quite a bit.
But I think that's good. But I think it's good that they have like a very. But again, like I think it's important that they've got so many different. Sure. Yeah, they got a good spectrum of thinking, like old school and new school, which is kind of what you need to sell to people at this point, right?
Yeah.
I really like the idea of the Canucks going to her, calling her and saying, "Hey, calling her in for an interview to be the GM." I think if she's being given the power to hire GMs for other teams, particularly an expansion team where the GM is that's like the big, like that can set your franchise forward or backwards years. If you're giving someone that kind of power, that means they've got something going. They know what they're doing. They have something there. It's a bit of a wild card because she hasn't held a GM position before.
Right. You'd have to be hoping that the Seattle proof of concept actually is successful in its first year, right, which would kind of not run in congruency with the Canucks timeline for hiring a new GM. Yeah. But I like what you're thinking is that going young and, getting a completely different set of eyes, basically.
Going with that and somebody who has an analytical background is nice. Is nice as well. And then what else was I going to put in there? Yeah, it's the obvious. Would they come? Would she come? Probably not, because again, the Kraken haven't played a single game. I don't know. If say the Canucks called and were like, "Hey, we're going to offer you without an interview GM right now," maybe she'd say yes.
Takes it. Yeah.
But I don't think that's how it would go. And hey, I just like and I think it would be cool to see the idea of teams being more open about, hey, she's very clearly not one of the old 200 hockey men. She would be, if the Canucks gave her job, she'd be the first woman to ever GM an NHL team, which would be pretty darn cool.
That would be
I think it would be a good stepping stone at least to see, even if they just called up and asked and inquired, I think that would show from the Canucks standpoint that they're willing to look.
Yeah, that they're open to something, but
to something different, just trying something that's not just off the same path as everybody else. And I think that's what's most important for this team right now.
At the end of the day, you and I both know, though, that if Aquilini invested 7 years into Jim Benning and he got one playoff run, his next GM is going to be someone he knows is like an experienced guy. He's not going to be a first-time GM. He's going to be someone with experience.
Hey, Mike Gillis was a first-time GM when they hired him.
Granted, okay.
And he got President Strove's.
So in all the years that Aquilini's been owner, though, all these first-time GMs, how many cups does he have? He doesn't give a shit anymore. He needs.
I mean,
he's
inspirational cups, metaphorical cups. What are we talking here? Yeah, then we got a lot.
Yeah, that's what they're looking for at the end. Well, you know who's a GM that they're not going to hire? That's John Chayka, who was suspended by the league for conduct unbefitting of the league itself.
Fun fact: John Chayka actually was in the Canucks. Was actually within the Canucks kind of department at one point under Mike Gillis. So that is interesting.
A contract that Jim Benning chose not to renew with Stathletes, and kind of, in a way, led to John Chayka being hired by the Arizona Coyotes because he wasn't strapped to a team in a roundabout way. Yes,
in a roundabout way.
So that's actually kind of interesting. But the only reason I kind of wanted to talk about this is that as soon as the ruling was dished out that Chayka was suspended by the league until the end of this year, 2021, you saw all those dumbass takes being like, NHL 1, analytics 0. Take that, analytics. Like, I really need people to understand that this isn't about
all the
analytics.
People are like, he's not ours. Don't give him to us. He has nothing to do with analytics.
Yes. So for anyone listening to this that doesn't quite understand, John Chayka's bread and butter was a company he founded called Stathletes, which was like a pretty unique for its time company that sold or tracked and sold proprietary data that they owned and kept private to NHL teams, NHL teams, AHL, like any sports team in general. They collected the data, they created the reports, they did whatever it was, gave it to the teams, and only them alone had access to it. At one point, the Vancouver Canucks had a
contract just to work with them, like just
significant contract for funds to be.
I think at one point they could have bought Stathletes entirely. I think that was an option on the table for Aquilini, and they decided to.
Yes, they decided it wasn't worth it at the time. But the rapport that Chayka had as this analytics guy technically was only like on face value, because the hockey analytics community is very like interwoven with like a community aspect
as you all
of it.
know.
It is all peer driven. It is all like everyone figures out like a formula for something. They're sharing research, they're sharing methodology, they're all working in unison to find the best ways to quantify and evaluate hockey players and hockey play, to best identify players and stuff like that.
Right.
And because Stathlete's model was privately held, nobody knew what they were actually measuring. Nobody had any clue or has any clue what the KPIs, what kind of measurements they were taking to evaluate, who was a good player to draft, who was a good NHL player to sign. Nobody had a single clue. So the hockey.
And when we say private, like we don't just mean we don't just mean like you had to pay a subscription fee. No, you had to be a team to get it. You could not just go and be like, oh, I would like to open an account for whatever amount a month, you might see on like a Patreon nowadays, or something like that. No, completely private. Unless you ran a major sports franchise, you did not get a look at those numbers.
And private in the sense that it was confidential, where the methodology and the science or math behind whatever kind of reports they were generating were kept confidential to Stathletes themselves.
Yes.
And at one point, this is like a little bit of a side tangent, but Jason Botchford had a athletic piece about this and said, how is it not a conflict of interest that John Chayka's sister runs the company he once owned and sells this proprietary data to existing NHL teams that compete directly with John's team, the Arizona Coyotes?
I did a whole Patreon episode on all that when he got fired. When he left
the Patreon.
Team.
We'll drop that at the very end of the clip. But
subscribe. I did like 40 minutes on it.
Good, because at the end of the day, the whole point being there's so much secrecy around the Stathletes that the hockey analytics community that is very based on Twitter and blogs and stuff like that, who work together all the time, basically were shrugging their shoulders going, we don't know what it's about. We don't know what Stathletes values more than the analytics community, which is usually pretty in line with each other for the most part.
For all we know, theoretically, you could be getting nearly just as good statistics from the free online guy or like the send some money in the tip jar guys.
Yeah,
than
from
you
the
might
patron
be
guys,
from Southeast,
right?
because but again, we have no way of verifying whether that's true.
No
but
idea.
For all we know, it could be just as good. You don't know.
Yes, and at the end of the day, this proprietary model that Stathletes had that John basically parlayed into an executive GM position got him this label as being an analytics GM, which again is true in face value, but not necessarily analytics the way that the hockey analytics community views themselves as analytics people. So,
and certainly not in his roster moves either. A lot
certainly
of
not in his roster moves
ran very counter to what
yes.
good analytics would be considered.
Most analytics would have looked at some of the moves the Coyotes have made over the past 4 years and been like, what kind of models is he using? Because
yes.
the players that they identified or that they drafted and then immediately flipped for aging players makes no sense whatsoever. Yeah. And so you have to wonder, like, okay, did this guy, like, I saw this joke a lot is Chayka pulled off the greatest grift by basically conning the Arizona Coyotes into convincing them that he was an analytics guy when he really didn't know what the fuck he was doing. Ooh. And that's not what we're saying. I'm not saying he doesn't know what he's doing. Obviously, he was able to create and grow and build a $1 million
you can't do that.
Analytics company. You can't do that with nothing. Megan Chayka, like, I love her Twitter with all the stuff that she puts out there.
Yes.
I didn't like the way she handled Jason Bochford calling out the conflict of interest. I didn't really like.
I don't think I've seen her response to that.
Her response to it was like, it kind of glossed over the conflict of interest issue that he was talking about and said it was because she was a woman, which wasn't really the issue he was raising.
Yeah. The main, again, just to kind of like clarify, especially like the main conflict of interest here being, like, if you think about, again, just to think about it critically, if you're an NHL GM, why on earth would you, if you're an NHL GM who theoretically has this secret key to building a great team to win a championship, why would you give it to your opponents? Why would you ever give it to the other teams? And why would you sell it to the other teams in the league? Yeah. Why would you let them have access to it? Which is that great question. And it's a great question that Botch raised at the time.
Exactly.
And it's been a few years.
That was a few years ago, yeah. But yeah, totally interesting. It's very curious, and yeah, I need to throw that asterisk out there that, like, Chayka's suspension by the league is completely warranted, grant you.
Yes.
And
apparently it's not even about the draft combine stuff, which
it's not about the cheating of the
weird.
draft, which is like, yeah, if you have this proprietary data that no one has access to and you have your own methodology, why are you cheating at drafts? Like, how garbage is your system?
Why are you cheating on the combine?
Yeah, like
why do you need to see them weightlift a couple times more?
I loved Bochford's piece because he in his thing pointing out the conflict of interest, he's like, there was one part where they were saying they were measuring the size of people's brains and doing brain scans to see their like the way they could react to puck action and stuff like that. And so I'm picturing like them doing a pre-combine with calipers on like people's head sizes and being like, yes, this is the man we want.
I'm literally picturing like Mr. Burns and Smithers like getting like, hey, Smithers, hand me the ice cream scoop. It's damn it, Smithers, this isn't rocket science, it's brain surgery. Yeah. like they're just like cutting open the head,
just
being like,
oh, nonsense. It is like a cartoon what they're pulling off. Yeah.
Yeah, that's literally what I'm imagining.
Yeah, so like his suspension, like, it's completely warranted. Like, apparently the guy was like overtly trying to get himself out of his contract with the Arizona Coyotes to move up into a better position, which I don't know how, like, if you're the GM running a company or running a Coyotes multi-million dollar franchise.
Yes, 100%.
Like, I'm not too sure where do you go from there unless you're selling
Well, it's to go up to another
to ownership levels is my guess.
or going up to like another a GM position to say a higher profile
Like an original
team,
6 or something like that.
sort of thing. Yeah, but
yeah, total goof. But this is not reflective of the actual hockey analytics community, who are very welcoming to
and very nice
guys
people
like myself who just like do their own random weird stats on Excel sheets for
and me,
NHL
guy
teams.
who does not understand what he's looking at 99% of the
Exactly.
time, but I'm trying. I think that's something that I guess I'm technically eye test guy because I don't know any better, but I'm trying to learn because I think it's because at the end of the day, it's all just tools that you're trying to learn to make yourself better at analyzing and evaluating talent.
Yeah.
And yeah, hopefully I can learn it some. I think I'm getting better. I think I can understand the general like ABCs of it now, which I couldn't before, and that's really and it's good. It's and they're very good. They're very great about answering your questions if you have them, which I often do.
Well, speaking of learning and learning to grow and develop yourself, we have a trade to announce.
Great transition. Holy, that was the lead.
Thank you. A little clap and chat for that one.
Yes.
Winnipeg trades Patrik Laine and holdout Jack Roslovic to the Columbus Blue Jackets for Pierre-Luc Dubois and a 2022 third-round pick. Note, they retain salary on Laine's current bridge contract. We talked about a possible Laine Dubois deal in like our very first episode. And we were like, I guess it could make sense. And we talked about how Roslovic was from Columbus and how it would make sense. But like, I don't know why Columbus or Winnipeg would think this is a good idea for their teams. But here we are, less than 4
looking
weeks since our first episode. And Patrik Laine is on the IR list, and he hasn't made his debut for Columbus. And Pierre-Luc Dubois has not made his Jets debut yet either.
COVID restrictions,
baby. But
the Canucks will not have to play Dubois the first time they play the Jets, which is next week, I believe.
Yes, so
lucky lucky them.
Yeah, lucky them for now. They will not get him when he's guns a-blazing, looking to make a statement in his first few games as a member of the Canadian North Division. They maybe he'll be a little tired by the time they see him later down the road, hopefully. But the Jets really solidified themselves with like a great center depth now. They have
a good group. Shifley, they have
and Dubois. And then like one of Lowry or whoever the fuck it is, Cobb, who's playing center on their fourth line per role. It doesn't matter. That top three, like back to back, is really legit. That's a tough center.
It's high level.
Crack. Now, the more interesting part about this whole thing, I say that as I wear my Jets Heritage jersey.
Traitor.
I'm devastated personally to see Laine go because I can't reconcile in my brain getting rid of a like generational goal scorer from Finland again. That's too much for me.
Again. That's right.
I can't take that. It hurts my brain.
It's Teemu too.
But I am so curious to see what happens to Laine under a Tortorella system. Like, is he going to be such a good goal scorer that Tortorella's like, no, I'm not going to ask you to play a two-way game or block shots. You can do whatever you want. Or are the Jackets just setting themselves up for disaster? And did they just bring in a player who isn't going to gel with their coach? And are they going to then get rid of their coach because he doesn't gel with the guy they just traded for? There's so much to take away from it from the Columbus side where you're like, did they just make their bed with the coach?
I mean, hey, so they get two players. They get two players out of it with Laine. I do think Laine has been talking about how he wants to be more responsible in his defensive end. I think that's been something that he's been trying to work on.
He was fine last year, too, as far as I was concerned. I thought he made some significant improvements in that end.
That's a good start. I think I think he's such a bona fide good for 30 goals guy every single year, even on like that one weird off year he had.
Yeah.
That I think it's a good I think it's a good fit there for him. I think he's going to. I think I think he will flourish a little bit in the fact that he's not going to be so much in the. No, I don't want to say not the spotlight because I don't think Columbus isn't a small market. Well,
He'll
it's
be
small
in the
by
spotlight
NHL
by
standards.
virtue of being an actual star on that team.
Yes. But he's not going to. But it's not like in Winnipeg, say, where they're on national television on a regular base, on a weekly basis.
Yeah.
Frankly, right? And so you're not at just a little bit less under the microscope. I think that will help.
Right.
And I think it's interesting how quickly this came together, especially because I don't know if you saw the Dubois shift. It
was bad.
It was bad. I thought it was it was one of those you thought it was like when you see
when you hear about it, you're like,
when you hear
how
the
bad
Dubois,
could it be?
you're like, you're thinking like, oh, this is torts. This is just classic torts all over again. Because sometimes that is a very torts thing to do if a guy is not performing, to bench him for the rest of the game. But then you actually watch the shift.
You watch the shift,
you're like, there's no hustle there.
Nope.
There is this was a guy. I don't know if it was on purpose. I assume it was a little bit on purpose.
It must have been.
It was sending
pathetic.
a message of it was the slap shot trade me right fucking now.
Yeah, it was
sort
straight
of
up
thing.
just like he might as well have worn a shirt that just said, it's going to be like this all year if you don't trade me.
Or I'm just here so I don't get fined. That's
that
what
was
he
what
needed.
that was. That's what that
he
shit
literally
was.
He literally was just like gliding around the ice. There was one puck battle where he just kind of goes, and just kind of just takes a little bit of a poke at the puck and immediately loses it, and it's going the other way, and he just glides back. It's like, that is like it was cringy to watch. It was it was very clearly a guy sending a message of please get rid of me right now. Yeah. And I guess it was very much it was a clear headache that Columbus needed to get rid of, because what are you going to do, bench him for the rest of the year? You're going to bench a prime asset like that? You have to get rid of them.
Yeah, you got to do it before his value is just completely plummet, and you get nothing in return. They jumped on it early enough where they managed to get the Jets star winger and prime goal scorer and a bottom six center who's okay in exchange for a guy who was never going to try for them so long he was on the roster. Yeah. So Columbus cleaned up.
Yeah. And I think even in Winnipeg's case with Laine, I think there was there was some stuff of the locker room was not doing so well.
Yeah, I didn't like that.
There's a bit of a divide going there, and this was kind of part of why
since their playoff run, apparently, where Wheeler was ultra hard on the young kids, which is I don't know. I just get vibes of all the stories of abuse and hazing and crap like that, and I'm like if this is what's coming out, what isn't coming out?
Yeah, we don't know if it goes ever. There was the tracksuit. There was the tracksuit thing with Evander Kane.
Yeah,
that was real bad.
Yeah,
there's definitely a history there with the young guys getting kind of a little bit railroaded sometimes.
A little bit.
And that's probably that definitely might have something to do with why Laine wanted to go and was ready to go, and maybe Jack Roslovic too. I don't know for sure, but it could have been.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, you do wonder, say, if Dubois, is it going to be... again, you watched that shift the last time. You almost wonder if that's not going to... Is that a fix? Is that an actual fix here for them?
Yeah.
In that regard? I do think, I'll say this. I think both teams had headaches that they needed to move on from. Mm-hmm. They just needed to clear it up and get it done and sort it out, because it was going to hang over them like a cloud for the rest until they did. And I think, as far as I'm concerned, both teams get something good here. I don't feel I think if I had I'll ask you this, if you think there's a winner to be had here. And again, trades don't really have to be winners and losers. I would say that just in a general sense, I think Winnipeg might be getting the better short-term deal out of this, and Columbus maybe getting a little bit more of playing the long game a little bit more here.
Yeah, exactly.
And so if like there was like a winner right now sort of thing, it's the Jets, but I think both teams are getting what they need. Both teams are getting something that they need, and they're getting rid of an issue that they just couldn't be dealing with anymore.
Yeah, exactly. I agree.
And
sorry.
Oh yeah, that's pretty much it. That's all there is to it. I will ask you this: where does this put the Jets for you in terms of the North Division and where they go from here? Do you think this?
I don't think it makes a difference, to be honest. My issue as a Jets fan was that they traded their star winger and like a decent bottom six center, and they didn't get a defenseman back.
Yes, the defense is clearly their biggest problem here.
Just atrocious. And now you needed something on the back end at least to help out, and they got nothing out of it. So a part of me is like, PLD is great. Like that'll really bolster their top nine. But at the end of the day, if your defense is like a bunch of ramshackle options who can't stop pucks, then it doesn't really matter. They're not going to do anything with it.
Yeah, according to Elliot Friedman today, they tried to one of the deals they tried to do with for Laine was with Philly and tried to move him for. They asked for Ivan Provorov. Flyers just immediately shut that down. That would have been a nice fix for them. But I will say this we talked already about goalies that can bail you out on a nightly basis like Jacob Markstrom can. Connor Hellebuyck can do that. Connor Hellebuyck could very easily just drag that defense kicking and screaming into the playoffs.
And he's tried.
He has tried. And he's succeeded a couple times. But I do think it moves the needle just a little bit in the sense of I think it makes it a little bit more like that third or fourth spot looks a little bit more attainable for them, just because if this does make things a little bit more cohesive in your locker room and maybe things aren't as like contentious, that might just help you that much more to actually get something done. And but from a general standpoint, no, they're still they still got work to do, and they could still very easily get passed by an Edmonton with a hot Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl just running over everybody. Or hey, if the Canucks figure their stuff out, it's not out of the question to say they couldn't jump over them too. So it moves the needle a little bit in their favor, but not enough to say, oh, this is a guaranteed playoff team or anything, right? Yeah, no.
Not at all. Well, that, I think, sums up all the major news of the week. The only thing we wanted to quickly touch on was the NWHL season started this last weekend.
Yes.
They're on Twitch. I used my Amazon Prime free subscription to subscribe to them. If you didn't know that, if you are listening, you get a free subscription with Prime that you can use on anyone. And
once again, not sponsored.
Not sponsored at all.
Not sponsored at all.
Jeff Bezos, give me $1 billion and all.
Oh yeah,
crap.
That guy could. Yeah.
But yeah,
with I especially because we're two straight white males running another hockey podcast that there's plenty of
700 other.
Yes, exactly.
Podcasts,
I do think it's important that we put time, that we make sure we're putting the time to talk about stuff like women, like the NWHL and I'm gonna get this acronym wrong, aren't I? The PWHPA. I think that's it. Doesn't roll off the tongue quite as well as the NWHL does. Yes. But like the women, the independent women's players association that are playing their exhibition games in the US and Canada, trying to get a pro league another pro league started. Mm-hmm. I will say I think it's good to try and talk about women's hockey as much as we possibly can, because that's what it needs. It needs more. The game always needs more exposure. And I mean, you've seen just this weekend, you've seen what some of the not so great people can do when it comes to NWHL. But you've also seen some of the really good things, like JT Brown and Steve Dangle out there giving a bunch of subs away. The BroadCast giving away a bunch of subs today, I think.
Yeah, everyone was popping off in the sub donations, which is great. That's money straight in the pocket of the NWHL. And hey, anything to keep them away from Barstool Sports being a main sponsor.
Oh no! Here come Here come the mention. Here come the mentions now.
Suck my
No.
dick, you stupid fucks.
You know what?
Don't
You know
give a
what?
shit.
You know what? I second that.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. I want to ask you this. So if we're gonna talk about NWHL on a regularly, I think it's important that we have teams. Okay. Who is your NWHL team that you're gonna be like rooting for this year? Who's your team?
I'll go with the Metropolitan Riveters.
Okay.
Only because I cannot stand that the team from Toronto is named the Six. That just like that bothers me so much.
I'm not a huge fan of that name
and
either.
I hate the logo too. I just it bothers me so much.
I think the logo's all right. The name's a little bit funky.
Oh, sorry.
If
If not the Riveters, the Buffalo Buttes, because it's a really like kind of douche bro name. But
that is a great name. It's a great hockey
it's like
name.
It's kind of cute, the logo. So one of those two. Riveters is like straight up just Rosie the Riveter as a jersey, which is pretty rad.
So cool.
Yeah. So I'll take them. What about you?
So I'm going. I guess this is kind of like this makes too much sense in my opinion. Gotta go with the Connecticut Whale. You gotta go with the team that wears green and blue and also has a whale on their jersey.
Fair.
That's perfect synergy with the Canucks. I'm surprised the Canucks haven't done what all the other teams are doing and sent them player cutouts yet for the arena. I think that's a thing you can do where you can like send the teams have been sending cutouts to put because all the games are in a bubble the games are in a bubble this year for them. Yeah. I believe in like Lake Placid. I think it's in Lake Placid. Yeah. I watched some of the games on Saturday. Very fun. It's very good hockey. Yeah, I've got to go with the Whale. I got to go with the Connecticut Whale. You gotta pick the team that feels the closest to your heart, and absolutely, that's them, and that's them. The spiritual successors to the Hartford Whalers. I mean, everything you could love about that. Everything you could love. Their jerseys are super nice too. I think they went full green. I think this year they went full green.
I think it's then their one is like kind of like the Utica Thirds, which are pretty clean too. So
yeah,
I'm a fan.
Canucks, if you are listening to this, why have you not done a green alternate jersey yet? Don't tell me the reverse retro is. Don't tell me the reverse retro is green.
That's a Fresca can.
We all know that's a blue jersey with green accents. Yeah. Do not try and fool me with that. I want to see an actual green Canucks jersey at some point, like the Whale are doing. I'm gonna be But yeah, I'm gonna be keeping an eye on Connecticut this year. Maybe we'll just have to do check-ins on our teams on like regular episodes.
We might have
or something
to.
like that. Yeah.
Well, until then, though, we'll be signing off for now. Thanks for listening in, guys. Don't forget you can subscribe to our Patreon. We have $1 tier, $5 tiers, and we'll be throwing up content whenever we can.
Yes.
Lachlan, where can the fans find you?
You can find me on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at Lach and the Crease, and you can find my writing work at lachandthecrease.com, where I post the North Division power rankings every week, and I do some other articles as well. I also now apparently do the Canuck jersey.
Yes, we need those.
Jersey records. That was a funny thing. Oh, just quickly before we call it up, it's really funny because everyone was talking about the jerseys and like the jersey, and Quads was talking about how the Canucks need to bring back that flying skate. And over the weekend, I had just been kind of like making kind of a little web page on my site for that kind of like keeping track of the old jersey records, just because I was kind of interested in it myself, and also I was kind of testing out some of like the WordPress new editor stuff and everything, and just kind of seeing the stuff I could do with it. Mm-hmm. And I posted a link to it. I'm like, oh, funny Quads mentions this because hey, the Canucks had like an 875 winning percentage in that jersey, and then shout out Wyatt Arndt the stanchion, he picked it up. Because of course he picks up anything that involves the skate movement.
Anything that hypes up the black skate, yeah, of course.
Yes, exactly, and that got a bunch of traffic going to my website all day yesterday and today. So, and again, I was not planning to make that public. I just kind of happened to throw it up there. But now it's public. Now it's a public thing. So I guess I'm going to be doing that as well. You'll be able to find out which jerseys are the most cursed that the Canucks wear and which ones are the most lucky and bring the most success.
Hell yeah. Well, you can find me at Cody Severson on Twitter and cometsharvest.com for all game recaps. My recaps will be starting February 5th, and as such, you'll probably be hearing me only maybe once a week once the season starts up. But we're going to be recapping Canucks. Next episode, we'll be covering the Ottawa Sens back-to-back Wednesday, Thursday games. So it should be a good one. Hopefully the Canucks eke out 2 more wins. Because if they don't,
eke out 7-1 wins.
Yeah.
Because if not, oh no, everything is on fire again.
Yeah. Well,
it's an inferno at that point.
Yeah. Geez, God, don't even get me started.
Yeah. Don't let's not bring that into the world. You're right. Why am I being Captain Negative now? Yeah, you're right. That is your job. I'm right. Mr. Positive.
Well, until then, this is Mr. Positive, Cody Severson signing off for Lach and Crease. This is the CreaseCast. Thanks everyone for tuning in. Bye.
Bye.